Just moments ago, the palace halls trembled as Princess Anne, known for her steely resolve and loyalty to duty, made a revelation that shattered royal silence. A set of secret instructions allegedly written by Queen Elizabeth herself have surfaced, and they carry a shocking directive. Camilla is to be denied access to the crown jewels. But why now? And what was the Queen truly trying to protect? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. What followed that statement was not chaos, but something far more dangerous: certainty. Princess Anne did not speak in rumors or half-sentences. She spoke with the calm authority of a woman who had waited years for the right moment. In a closed council meeting attended by senior royals and legal advisors, she confirmed that her mother had left behind handwritten instructions, sealed inside a private vault accessible only through a chain of trust few even knew existed. This was not palace gossip resurrected for drama. This was ink on paper, a deliberate command, and according to Anne, it had been there all along. For decades, Queen Elizabeth's public composure masked a deeper caution, a quiet hesitation that many dismissed as tradition. Yet Anne's words reframed history. She revealed that her mother had expressed concern in private notes, never cruel, never explosive, but unmistakably wary about whether certain symbols of the monarchy should pass into what she once described as uncertain hands. That phrase alone now echoes through every corridor of power. The timing of Anne's confirmation was no coincidence. Camilla had reportedly prepared to wear the imperial state crown again at an upcoming state function, a gesture meant to solidify her standing. Instead, the ground shifted beneath her feet. Palace insiders describe a ripple of panic as senior aides scrambled to verify the existence of the sealed document. Calls were made, locks were opened, and there it was, an envelope bearing the late Queen's unmistakable script, preserved not as suggestion but as instruction. Anne's tone, those present say, carried both grief and steel. She did not sound vindictive, she sounded protective. Protective of her mother's legacy, protective of the sacred weight carried by the jewels themselves. In that moment, she was not merely a daughter defending memory. She was a guardian executing a final wish. And that distinction changes everything. Because if the Queen truly intended to block Camilla from the crown jewels, then this is no minor family dispute. It is a silent verdict delivered from beyond the throne. A line drawn not in public speeches, but in private conviction. The monarchy now stands suspended between loyalty to a reigning king and obedience to a departed queen, whose authority still lingers like a shadow over every decision. The whispers have already become headlines. The headlines are becoming battle lines. And while some argue that symbols are just metal and stone, others understand that in a monarchy, symbols are power itself. If Camilla is denied the jewels, what else might she be denied? If the Queen doubted her once, did that doubt extend further than anyone imagined? Anne has opened a door that cannot be closed again, and as the weight of that sealed instruction settles over Buckingham Palace, one unsettling truth emerges. This wasn't a sudden fracture. It was the culmination of years of silent tension, of carefully controlled expressions, of words left unsaid until now. Because this wasn't the first sign of the Queen's doubts, hidden behind decades of smiles were moments the cameras never caught. Long before her passing, Queen Elizabeth harbored concerns few dared speak of aloud. Her composed exterior masked a deeply personal struggle. Could Camilla ever truly uphold the sacred legacy of the crown? Hidden journals, late-night letters, and subtle gestures now come into sharp focus. While the Queen maintained her public image as the unshakable matriarch of a 1,000-year-old institution behind closed doors, those closest to her witnessed a quiet, growing disquiet. Camilla's presence, though formally accepted, never truly settled into the Queen's inner world. There were whispers within the palace walls, carefully exchanged glances, coded messages scribbled in margins, and conversations that shifted direction the moment a third party entered the room. These weren't mere family dynamics. They were the silent calculations of a monarch burdened with preserving more than just bloodlines. She was guarding the sanctity of an empire's soul. It began with the hesitations. The Queen's repeated delays in formally naming Camilla as Queen Consort raised eyebrows, especially when contrasted with her otherwise meticulous approach to protocol. The public was told it was out of respect, out of caution, but insiders now say it was something else entirely: uncertainty. The Queen had grown weary of the dissonance between public appearances and private truth. In her journal entries, recently surfaced in a leak confirmed by multiple sources close to the royal household, Elizabeth reportedly referred to unworthy hands and the burden of protecting the crown from misaligned ambition. Though no names were explicitly written, the context was undeniable. Each entry came after a key event involving Camilla, whether a misstep at a state dinner or a remark made in poor taste behind palace doors. These moments accumulated like shadows, stretching long across the corridors of Windsor. It was Anne, the ever-loyal daughter, who became the Queen's emotional confidant in these final years. She wasn't just a sounding board, she was a witness to doubt, to pain, to the weight of decisions no monarch ever wants to make. Their nightly conversations reportedly drifted into dangerous territory: legacy, succession, and trust. And it was in one of these intimate discussions that the Queen first mentioned the idea of formalizing her concerns in writing. Anne did not object. She listened, stoic and unwavering. When the Queen eventually instructed that a sealed envelope be drafted and locked away, labelled with the chilling phrase "instructions regarding regalia," Anne ensured it was done, without fanfare, without resistance, because she understood. The jewels were not mere ornaments, they were history forged into metal, truth cut into stone, and they had to be protected. The Queen's instincts were not driven by jealousy or tradition alone. There was a deeper fear that Camilla's loyalty did not lie with the crown, but with personal legacy. In a system built on service, that was a threat too grave to ignore. And in that sealed envelope, she encoded more than instruction. She left behind a final act of stewardship, a last defense of everything she had preserved. While the public still debated ceremonial titles, the Queen had already drawn the line behind palace doors. Her silence had always spoken volumes. Now her pen had spoken louder. And yet, it wasn't just the Queen's intuition. Camilla's own actions had already set royal tempers ablaze. The moment that crossed the line, an unsanctioned visit to the royal vault. Palace insiders now claim that Camilla requested private access to the crown jewels without the king's full clearance. What she intended to do remains murky, but surveillance records suggest this wasn't an innocent glance. The vault, long protected by layers of royal protocol and iron tradition, had rarely seen an unscheduled visitor, let alone one of Camilla's status operating without oversight. Yet on that fateful day, she arrived unaccompanied by the usual security detail, flanked only by a junior assistant whose name doesn't even appear in the official logs. The crown jewels, symbols of power and sacrifice, lay before her. And then something changed. The cameras blinked. A section of footage spanning 12 crucial minutes remains corrupted. And when the feed returned, one of the tiaras historically linked to Queen Victoria was gone. The disappearance was brief but damning. That same tiara resurfaced hours later in a different location within the tower, positioned awkwardly atop an archive box, far from its velvet-lined casing. A palace source familiar with the system confirmed that such a misplacement had never happened before. Coincidence? Perhaps. But a seasoned royal aide who reported the incident found themselves reassigned to a ceremonial post in Norfolk within 48 hours. The message was clear: silence is safer than scrutiny. What rattled the palace more, however, was what happened the next morning. The Royal Guard's access logs, normally airtight, had been quietly edited. 2 entries were missing, digital footprints erased. When pressed, the internal security chief offered no explanation, only a quiet resignation submitted 2 days later. Behind the grandeur of gold and crimson, something was rotting. When word of the event reached Princess Anne, her reaction was swift and unforgiving. She did not request a meeting, she summoned one. Behind closed doors, she confronted King Charles directly. What exactly was said remains cloaked in secrecy, but several insiders described the clash as explosive. Anne demanded transparency, she demanded accountability, and above all, she demanded access to the Queen's sealed instructions. For years, that envelope had remained untouched, spoken of in whispers. dismissed as symbolic. But now, with the jewels themselves potentially compromised, it became the most critical object in the monarchy. Some say Charles hesitated, others say he turned pale. But no one disputes that Anne left that room with more power than she walked in with. The Queen's voice, long silenced, was about to be heard again. There is a weight to legacy that not even kings can escape, and Anne, ever her mother's daughter, knew the line had been crossed. This wasn't about a tiara, it wasn't even about Camilla. It was about what the crown represented and who had the right to touch it. The royal vault had been breached, not by force but by entitlement, and while Charles may have hoped to contain the fallout, Anne was already preparing to expose it. The Queen's envelope was no longer a relic of the past. It was a weapon, and it was about to be opened. But the true bombshell wasn't the act. It was what Anne did after she learned the truth. In the dead of night, behind sealed doors and drawn curtains, Princess Anne presented King Charles with a demand that stunned even his closest aides. Honor the Queen's final instructions, or she walks away from the royal council forever. No one could have anticipated the magnitude of her ultimatum. This was not a suggestion wrapped in protocol. It was an unflinching declaration born from years of silence and burdened loyalty. Anne, who had been the quiet strength behind the throne for decades, had reached her breaking point. She entered the council chamber not as the king's sister, but as the Queen's final protector. And the document she brought with her, the sealed envelope, bearing their mother's final words, was the fuse that threatened to ignite the palace from within. Inside, tensions erupted. For years, Charles had balanced between the ghosts of duty and the weight of personal devotion. But Anne's demand forced the collision he'd avoided. Sources within the palace now confirm what many suspected: there was shouting, raised voices, bitter truths, and moments of cold silence. Charles, visibly torn, stood at a crossroads that no monarch desires. On one side, his wife, Camilla, loyal, steadfast, yet at the center of a controversy that now threatened the crown's symbolic core. On the other, his mother's explicit directive, reinforced by Anne's resolve and Catherine's quiet but unshakable support. For once, the man who had worn the crown did not feel in control. He felt trapped by it. Anne's threat wasn't empty. She made it clear that if the Queen's instructions were not revealed in full to the Privy Council, she would bypass royal channels and leak it herself. That alone sent shockwaves through the upper ranks of the palace. For Anne to step so close to public defiance meant the stakes had reached a point of no return. And in the shadows of that confrontation stood Catherine, watching the storm unfold with unspoken alignment. While she did not raise her voice, insiders confirm she stood with Anne silently, firmly, and without hesitation. Her alliance in that moment was not just symbolic, it was strategic. Catherine knew what the public could endure and what it would never forgive. The pressure was seismic. Charles had to decide whether to preserve the illusion of unity or honor the dying wish of the woman whose reign defined an era. The Queen's instructions, once thought to be ceremonial, were now the beating heart of a constitutional crisis. And as the air thickened with indecision, the royal family fractured even further. Old alliances were tested, new ones were born. And through it all, Anne stood unyielding, not for power, not for glory, but for truth. She had made her choice. Now it was Charles who had to make his. But the secrets inside that sealed envelope would change everything the public thought they knew. The Queen's final private letter, long kept hidden within a guarded safe, was unsealed by royal decree. What it contained was nothing short of a royal reckoning. Not just a refusal, but a direct order. The crown jewels shall never rest upon the head of Camilla. The room stood still as the royal seal cracked, the weight of its contents pressing against every breath drawn by those in attendance. Senior royals, advisors, and legal representatives bore witness to history that had been hidden, buried beneath layers of diplomacy, unspoken alliances, and a monarchy's desperate attempt at unity. But now, the Queen's voice, from beyond the veil, thundered through that letter with more clarity and finality than anyone expected. And it was not written in the cold tone of protocol. It was raw, resolute, and heartbreakingly human. The letter revealed the Queen's deep concern for the symbolic legacy of the crown. It did not attack Camilla by name, but the message was clear. Elizabeth referred to the shifting winds of public sentiment and warned of placing sacred regalia upon uncertain devotion. She spoke of the crown jewels not as mere ornaments, but as instruments of continuity, sacrosanct symbols that demanded not just ceremony but conviction. Then came the reference that shattered the illusion of peace, the mention of Princess Diana. In a rare moment of vulnerability, the Queen acknowledged the wound Diana's memory still held within the nation's heart. She warned that any public misalignment between the crown and the people's affections would threaten the very fabric of the monarchy. Camilla, in that context, became a risk, and Elizabeth, ever the strategist, decided she could not take it. More shocking still, the Queen subtly hinted at an alternative future, a path carved not through conflict, but through care. She wrote of her admiration for Catherine, of the grace and discipline she had shown under fire, and her ability to inspire without overshadowing. Though the letter never named a successor, her wording left little doubt. Catherine was the future she envisioned, the one she trusted to wear the regalia not just with elegance, but with reverence. This revelation sent the palace legal team into a frenzy. Could a private letter, albeit from the monarch, override the king's current direction? Could instructions written before Elizabeth's passing bind the institution in the present? Advisors scrambled for answers. Some argued the letter was moral, not constitutional. Others feared ignoring it would spark an irreversible rupture between the crown and the public. Amid this chaos, all eyes turned to Anne. For years she had carried the burden of this truth in silence. But now, as the Queen's words echoed through the room, her composure broke not with weakness, but with vindication. Her loyalty had been mocked, her warnings ignored. And now, her mother had stood beside her from the grave. Those who had doubted Anne now stood corrected, not by argument, but by evidence. She was not the rebel, she was the keeper of the Queen's will. Her tears were not of grief, but of justice long denied. And yet, the silence that followed the reading did not last. Because outside that chamber, a storm was already gathering. Whispers of the letter were leaking, allies were shifting, and one voice, long muted, was preparing to rise in defiance. But the Queen's words ignited a fury no one saw coming from the woman who had once vowed to never compete. Cornered and humiliated, Camilla struck back not with silence but with strategy. In private meetings and public posturing, she began building her case. But her counterattack backfire in the most unexpected way. What began as quiet discontent behind palace walls quickly evolved into a full-fledged crisis management operation. Camilla, seething from the Queen's posthumous rejection and Anne's bold defiance, demanded a closed-door session with King Charles and a select team of legal advisors. The meeting, meant to be discreet, became the center of speculation after details were mysteriously leaked to a senior court correspondent. According to those close to the situation, Camilla's tone was firm, her stance defensive, and her message clear: she would not be erased, not without a fight. In a move that blindsided many, Camilla reportedly claimed she had suffered emotional damages as a result of the letter's release and its devastating implications. Aides revealed she even considered pursuing legal clarification on the monarchy's duty to shield her from what she called posthumous defamation. The room, according to a senior source, fell into stunned silence. But Camilla wasn't finished. She allegedly floated the idea of commissioning a new crown, an emblem of her own reign, untethered from Elizabeth's shadow. It was a move so brazen, so unprecedented, that it sent shockwaves through the palace and beyond. The idea of crowning oneself, while the nation reeled from the Queen's revelations, sparked immediate and widespread outrage. Senior courtiers warned of the public backlash, but Camilla was determined to seize control of the narrative. Meanwhile, the real fracture cracked open when Prince William privately expressed his refusal to support any public coronation or ceremony elevating Camilla further. He considered the Queen's words final, unchallengeable, sacred, and non-negotiable. His stance was not just symbolic, it was structural. Without William's visible support, any attempt to rehabilitate Camilla's public role would collapse before it even began. His declaration widened the already gaping fissure within the family. And while Charles remained caught between loyalty to his wife and allegiance to his late mother's wishes, the palace press office struggled to contain the storm. Journalists began demanding transparency. Public confidence dipped. Protest letters flooded in. Social media erupted with hashtags calling for the jewels to remain untouched. And then came the quiet defections. Allies who had once smiled beside Camilla in photos and applauded her every appearance began to vanish. Former confidants declined interviews. Patronages issued neutral statements. Her circle, once tight and influential, began to contract under the weight of public scrutiny and private doubt. She was not just losing control, she was losing ground. What was meant to be a counterattack had become a spectacle. Camilla's efforts to rewrite her place in royal history were met not with applause, but with resistance. And in that moment, the echoes of the Queen's letter grew louder. Every move Camilla made only reinforced the very warnings Elizabeth had left behind. It was no longer about the crown, it was about credibility. And Camilla's was slipping through her fingers. But while the monarchy splintered, the true heir to the Queen's legacy stepped forward from the shadows. In the silence that followed the scandal, one royal emerged as the quiet force holding the monarchy together. Princess Catherine, once the target of quiet jealousy, now stood as the living embodiment of the Queen's vision. And Anne made sure the world noticed. While others scrambled to repair reputations or salvage influence, Catherine never spoke a word in her own defense. She didn't need to. The Queen's final letter had done it for her. In an unprecedented move, Princess Anne issued a formal statement to the Privy Council, publicly recognizing Catherine as the keeper of legacy, invoking the very phrase her mother once used in private correspondence. The weight of those words echoed far beyond the palace gates. For a family so steeped in tradition, the act was revolutionary. Anne wasn't simply endorsing a duchess, she was passing a torch. Suddenly, the past took on new meaning. Catherine's years of composure, her restraint through scandal after scandal, were no longer viewed as passive silence, but as the very embodiment of the Queen's own ethos. Clips resurfaced of her walking behind Queen in solemn processions, of quiet glances exchanged during Jubilee events, of subtle nods and gestures once dismissed as formality. Now, those same moments were being replayed with reverence, dissected for the depth they carried. And at the center of it all was a single, chilling sentence from the Queen's sealed letter. She has shown grace under scrutiny. Hers is a crown not given, but earned. That line alone sent shockwaves through the monarchy. In those few words, Elizabeth had declared not just affection, but conviction. She had named her successor in spirit, if not in law. Public response was immediate and electric. Polls surged in Catherine's favor. Editorials described her as a symbol of earned royalty. Young people, once disillusioned by the idea of monarchy, began to speak of Catherine with renewed admiration. For the first time in years, the royal family felt like it had a future. Camilla's public engagements were quietly withdrawn, her calendar cleared without formal explanation. No press statements were issued, there was nothing to explain. The contrast spoke for itself. One woman was being gently ushered away, the other was stepping into the light. Not with a coronation or a title change, but with the quiet power of legitimacy. Even the media, so often divided in their royal loyalties, seemed to align in their verdict. Headlines hailed the Catherine era. Commentators dubbed the shift a new Elizabethan dawn. But beneath the praise was a deeper sentiment relief. For all the chaos that had erupted in recent weeks, the public could now see a path forward, led not by ambition, but by service. Catherine had not demanded the spotlight. She had simply stood the storm. And now the storm had cleared just long enough to reveal who remained standing with dignity intact. But just when the dust seemed to settle, one final secret surfaced, one that could shatter everything again. BR among the crown jewels inventory. A priceless tiara, one favored by the Queen during her early reign, remains missing. And a newly surfaced letter, addressed to Lady Louise Windsor, hints that the Queen entrusted more than instructions. She entrusted legacy. The disappearance of the Windsor halo tiara, once worn by a young Elizabeth in the years before her coronation, has sent shockwaves through both royal archives and public imagination. It had always been accounted for, photographed, and locked within the tower's most protected vault. But during a recent audit prompted by Anne's exposure of the Queen's sealed letter, its absence was confirmed. No formal explanation has been given. No documentation exists for any authorized removal. And yet, whispers within the palace suggest it didn't vanish. It was passed on in secret. The rumors point to one person, Lady Louise Windsor. Weeks before the Queen's death, a private visit occurred between the two, unrecorded in official calendars, noted only by a discreet footman's log. According to an unconfirmed source close to the Windsor estate, Elizabeth handed Louise a velvet box, sealed and initialed with the unmistakable royal insignia, ER. That same box was reportedly seen at Bagshot Park, carried in Louise's arms during a private family gathering. When aides questioned its contents, they were met with silence, but the timing, the secrecy, and the weight of that item all now cast a shadow of deeper significance. Ants. Was the Queen appointing Louise as a guardian of royal treasures outside official channels? Was this her way of ensuring that legacy untainted and undisturbed could survive the turbulence of succession? What began as quiet murmurs has now escalated into quiet rage. Camilla, upon learning of the missing piece, is said to have demanded an internal investigation. She allegedly referred to the move as unauthorized possession and pressed for the item's return. But Anne, who had until now remained publicly neutral on the tiara, issued a firm statement behind closed doors. The matter was not up for discussion. The Queen's wishes, she said, had been made clear. No one else has spoken since. Yet the implications are growing. For Louise, once viewed as a peripheral figure, this moment may mark the beginning of a very different path, one that positions her not just as the Queen's granddaughter, but as her chosen confidant in the shadows, a protector of legacy the world never expected. And as the palace grapples with the fallout, the world is left asking. Camilla may have worn the title, but the Queen's true intentions now lie in ink, legacy, and bloodline. Princess Anne confirmed what many suspected, that love, trust, and loyalty, not titles, define royal worth. And as history turns its page, one truth remains: Elizabeth left behind not just jewels, but judgment. In the aftermath of a reign defined by endurance, the final echoes of the Queen's will have now redefined the monarchy's moral compass. With unwavering precision, Anne delivered her mother's last message to those who needed to hear it most. "My mother knew who to trust," she said, in a voice void of theatrics but heavy with finality. And that statement, simple, resolute, closed the door on every argument that had once tried to rewrite the Queen's truth. The message was no longer about jewels or ceremony. It was about character, about who would carry the soul of the monarchy forward when the dust of tradition had settled. Across the nation, the impact was immediate. Polling showed a dramatic shift. 73% of the public now viewed Catherine not just as the future Queen consort, but as the rightful spiritual successor to Elizabeth herself. A wave of national sentiment surged behind her, not built on glamour or headlines, but on grace, patience, and proven strength. Meanwhile, Camilla's position grew increasingly precarious. Behind the scenes, the Royal Strategic Council began a quiet review of her future public role, weighing the Queen's final letter as more than just symbolic. There was no formal dismissal, no scandalous announcement, just a subtle pulling back, a fading from view that signaled a new reality. Her time as the central figure was over, not by decree, but by destiny. And then there was Lady Louise. The girl once hidden in plain sight now stood quietly at the edge of something profound. Her involvement, though still cloaked in protective secrecy, remained one of the Queen's final mysteries. Some said she had been chosen to safeguard the physical legacy, the heirlooms, the keepsakes, the pieces too personal to entrust to protocol. Others whispered of something deeper, a symbolic role meant to protect the monarchy's emotional truth from ever being rewritten again. Whatever the case, she did not seek attention. She followed the Queen's lead without needing to be seen. In the end, Queen Elizabeth's legacy was not cemented in titles or thrones. It was reflected in those she quietly prepared, the ones who carried her values forward not with spectacle, but with silent strength. The monarchy stands shaken, yes, but not shattered. Instead, it finds itself on the edge of rebirth. The gilded symbols may remain unchanged, but the soul behind them has shifted. The Queen, even in death, has crowned her successors not with gold, but with trust. The echoes of a crown denied may fade, but the shadow of the Queen's true will has only begun to rise. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.